Hello and welcome back to another episode of Charla Football. I am your host, Harold Tavares. I am joined by our regular co-host, Tomas Estrada. Tomas, how you doing on this lovely Monday, bro?
Doing great, bro. Happy to be here.
Yeah. A lot of football that happened this weekend, like every weekend, of course. But we saw history be made. So, of course, we have to talk about Bayern Munich. That's going to be the first thing. But before we get into any of that, make sure to follow Charla Football. Make sure to look at the website at CHARLA Football and look at all our links there. It'll take you to Spotify, TikTok, Instagram, where we post regularly. Support your small creators because with your help, we can make it big altogether. But yeah, let's get right into it. So we're going to talk about Bayer Leverkusen, the history that they were able to achieve this weekend, which was pretty significant in the world of football. If you know, you know. We're going to talk about the Premier League title race and how that's slipping away from the likes of Liverpool and Arsenal, basically given to Manchester City at this point, if everything goes well. And then we're going to look at Liga MX because I feel we kind of missed out on that in the past few episodes, but we have to dive into that because that's part of our roots. That's what got me into football, if we're being honest. That's what got us both into football. So how can we not talk about the Mexican League and all the madness that's going on there? But first, like I said, let's talk about the history that happened this weekend. Bayer Leverkusen's first Bundesliga title in 119 years. Finally ending Bayern Munich's hegemony, their dominance. So I think in the past 12 years, Bayern Munich have won it back to back to back, and now Bayer Leverkusen have finally done it, bro. They ended Kingsley Coman's run of 12 straight league titles.
I mean, it's something I was expected. Once I saw that they signed Harry Kane, I just knew.
And
And man, those trophies.
it's funny because, Harry Kane's a prolific goal scorer, and you would thought that with, Robert Lewandowski going to Barcelona, that would have, bolstered their attack. But not saying that he didn't do anything for them in the attack, but I mean, that up and coming story of Bayer Leverkusen just came out of nowhere. I don't think a lot of people expected it, especially because Xabi Alonso is the new coach. He came from Real Sociedad B and then straight to the first team at Bayern Leverkusen, and he's in the first 18 months he's already got them a Bundesliga and on road to win them a treble if everything goes well. I think he has 5 games left of the season.
Yeah, 5 games left. He's got the what is it, last quarterfinal game, semis, and then he's got the final, of course, if he were to play, and then that one game for the Pokal.
So he's everything set up for them to succeed, to be an invincible treble winner, which I don't think that's ever been done in history. I mean, the only invincibles that I can really think of are Arsenal's invincibles. But you said, I think when we talked about it earlier, they lost in the Champions League.
They had 11 ties.
Yeah.
Not invincibles in my book.
I think Bayer Leverkusen got a good amount of ties, but I mean, definitely a lot more wins than anything. But yeah, it's funny because up until, this year, Bayer Leverkusen, at least in their history, they've been known as Kusen, which kind of translate to runners up Kusen since 2002. I think we had talked about it in a previous podcast where I think back in 2002 they finished runners up behind Bayern Munich, right?
Behind Borussia Dortmund.
So
Borussia Dortmund.
And that's kind of history, right?
They went on to lose the Champions League final as well to Zidane.
So yeah, see, it's throughout their history, they've been kind of known as the runners-up. They'll never win anything. And finally, with this fresh, young, amped squad, they put in a good amount of money. They didn't spend a tremendous amount of money like a lot of the big teams in Europe are doing, but they spent a good amount. They scouted correctly, and they set up a clear structure and plan. And look at what they've done in the past 18 months under an incredible coach like Xabi Alonso. And you saw that in the game against Werder Bremen. I don't know if you watched the game, but I definitely did because I had to watch it. And you see from the first minute, the idea was clear and the mentality was set. When the players were playing, you saw that they were playing with that. We have to win today. We're going to win the league. While the first leg was a little sloppy. The first half was a little quiet. There wasn't much going on, and that's mainly because most of the key players were rested for the Europa League clash that's going to happen this week. Once the second half started, as the time went on, he was throwing on the key players like Grimaldo, Ezequiel Palacios, Patrick Schick, Jeremy Frimpong, Florian Wirtz, and Florian Wirtz completely just changed the game. And he's only 20 years old, so I thought that was crazy. He scored a hat trick on the day, and then it was I think the fourth goal that he scored, it was in the 83rd minute, and fans started rushing because they knew they had already won the league. There's no way they're going to come back from that. And then he was like telling the security and the fans like, oh, hold on, like we still got a game to play. And then he scores the fifth goal in the 89th minute. There's like a few seconds left of the game, but at that point, like just call it, and the ref, once the 90th minute hit, he just called the game and everybody just rushed the field. It was crazy to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely saw that, and it was something special for Bayer Leverkusen, as well as Chicharito actually sends them a message, all the way from Guadalajara, saying like how he was like, just like his time in Bayer Leverkusen, where he saw potential in the program, but there were just things missing, and one of them being a solid coach. And you get that with Xabi Alonso, and it's actually a surprise. I mean, who would have expected Xabi Alonso to be able to do this with Bayer Leverkusen?
Yeah, I don't think no one would have painted him to at least maybe not even win anything, probably to be successful, possibly, since successful in the terms for Bayer Leverkusen is like maybe a Champions League spot or Europa League spot, fight in the domestic cups, but
Or a
I mean,
top
he's and he's en route to do a treble if possible. And I mean, I don't think no one expected that. And something I really wanted to ask you was, who do you feel like is the standout player
I think
for Bayer Leverkusen?
it's definitely got to be Florian Wirtz. Just because 17 goals, 18 assists, it's something crazy, especially for a 20-year-old. I mean, especially in the game that we saw this weekend, it was just, I mean, he just came out in a pivot. Well, not a pivotal moment, because it's giving him the ultimate championship, but just what he's done throughout the whole season, and it's something I haven't seen in a while from a 20-year-old, especially.
And then keep in mind that he's coming back from an ACL injury too. So at 18 years old, he got that ACL like injury, and he had been out for quite some time. And he was already highly talked about like ever since he was like 17, 18 years old. But like after a period of time with such a drastic injury like that, a dramatic injury, like I mean, not a lot of people recover quite well or do it at the same level as Florian Wirtz has. And if anything, he looks even better than ever before. And I mean, that's something that's just so incredible to see, and definitely a player to watch for the future. But I agree with you. He's probably one of the most influential players. I think for me personally, I would go for the likes of Alejandro Grimaldo, the Spanish left back, fullback, who, I mean, in Xabi Alonso's system, you see that the fullbacks are key, kind of like how in Pep Guardiola's system, the fullbacks are key, where they kind of tuck in the midfield as well. And you see his output now at Benfica before he went to Bayer Leverkusen. He was producing highly. He was scoring and assisting pretty often, but now his stats kind of like just doubled. I think he has like over 20 plus goals and assists in all competitions. So he's about like over 20 plus goals and assists in all competitions. And for a fullback, that's very impressive. I think he's one of the top assisters in the top 5 leagues, if I'm not mistaken. So, but obviously he gives that defensive solidarity at the back. He's one of I think he's in the 94th percentile of recoveries, per game. So, I mean, not only is he producing an attack, but even in defense as well.
I mean, yeah, you can't really compete against that, especially at the fullback position where you need both. And defensively, he also looks pretty poised. I mean, he's able to track back, so there's just not really. I wouldn't be able to argue like, oh no, he's not that good, but he's actually a pretty solid fullback.
It's funny because you can say the same thing about pretty much everybody on the squad. Everyone has played an important role.
Because you think about a season ago, you're like, oh well, Bayer Leverkusen's where they're supposed to be, whereas we're 2 seasons ago they were like pretty far down the table. And just to go from jump, you wouldn't really have expected Bayer Leverkusen to improve that much in the course of 1 year. And they really did, and it's just something really surprising, especially with the players that Xabi Alonso was able to bring all of these characteristics out of them that a lot of coaches would have not been able to.
Yeah. And that's the most important part, being able to manage some of these players. Because, I mean, when you're professional for a reason, because you play really well. It's just about getting the best out of them.
Yeah.
And I think Xabi Alonso has definitely been able to do that.
Definitely. He's completely done that.
Now, that kind of wraps up, I mean, the historic run behind Leverkusen, because we already kind of went deep into it in the last podcast segment. So let's move into the Premier League, because obviously there's been a lot that's been going on there. And how can we not talk about the slip ups that happened between Liverpool and Arsenal? I was one of the believers that I thought Liverpool and Arsenal were going to be, the ones really putting the pressure on Man City, but now they're just putting the pressures on themselves, having lost both.
I mean,
This.
I told you that I told you that like 2 weeks ago, where I just feel like Liverpool and Arsenal are going to end up slipping and losing a game.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Man City, they just proven for the like past 4 to 5 years that if you give them a lead, they will carry that lead, and I feel like Man City's going to win this.
Mm-hmm.
Where I told you that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and I look at them. I didn't think it was going to be like so quick. I thought there was going to be a little bit more time, especially not when they were playing, for example, Liverpool playing Crystal Palace at home. Definitely they're stronger than Crystal Palace. You're playing at Anfield, that's an advantage. But I think what really affected them was the performance during the weekday against Atalanta, losing 3-0 in the Europa League. And I mean, how do you really come back from that? You got battered at home against a Serie A mid-table team. No, not mid-table. I think they're still fighting for European, but like Europa League level. They are not Champions League level team. So
technically, neither is Liverpool.
Yeah, technically you're right because they're in the Europa League right now.
Reason, so we can't forget about that. They're in the same competition for a reason. And Liverpool I don't know what happened. I mean, you look at the game and Liverpool has some quality opportunities where they're just not able to finish, an offside goal by Salah as well. But
do you feel like that's the story with Liverpool this season where they're able to create? I remember seeing a stat earlier where it's like they are one of the top teams in creation, but they're also one of the top teams in not being able to finish their opportunities. You have teams like Brentford, I think, that are more clinical than Liverpool.
I wouldn't really be able to pinpoint something like that where I'm like, oh yeah, they can't finish because of this or that. But what I can tell you is what really affected them is probably Klopp leaving. Especially now that they're down, they're like, well, we don't really have anything to play for, and we don't even know if we have a coach next season or who's the coach.
And
then they don't really have that stability where they could rely on Klopp.
Yeah. I would have argued that it would have been like that motivation because you kind of see with Barcelona and Xavi, they kind of gives them like that less pressure to play, and I mean, I would argue that it gives you something to play for. Like, oh, let's send them off in the right way. Like one of the most legendary coaches in club, let's send them off with a title at least. But I can also see what you're saying, where it's kind of like there's no stability. What are we even playing for? Our coach is going to leave us, and we don't even know who's going to come in next year. We don't even know if our spot's guaranteed or who's going to be sold and whatnot. So I can see where you're coming from in that point, and I feel like that's starting to reflect on the field pretty much because. I mean, 1-0 against 1-0 against Crystal Palace, and at least in the moment when I had seen the goal scored against Liverpool, like they were completely outplayed in that moment. You saw like 20 touches from the Crystal Palace in attack, and they were able to end it in the goal. Even Klopp was like, "Wow!" Like even he was shocked as how well they completely dismantled Liverpool, pretty much. And it's crazy because, I mean, when's the last time you saw Liverpool lose 2 games at home like that?
You'd have to go back years. Because I at home is, I mean, that's what they're known for. Anfield is.
Yeah, it's like their fortress. I was looking back on some of their notes on some. I was doing a little bit of research pretty much, and I saw that the last time they had lost 2 games at Anfield in a dramatic fashion, they had lost up to 6 games in a row, and that was back in 2021. So it's been like 3 years, but they lost 6 games in a row consecutively. So, I mean, I'm not saying that this was going to happen this year because they have a stronger team that they had. I think probably around 2021. Or what would you argue? Do you think their squad now is stronger than what they had back then, or vice versa?
I'd argue that their squad may have been stronger back then because they had a prime Salah. You still have Bobby.
That's true.
You still have a lot of these solid players, and Bobby was really in his prime in 2021. You came off of winning a Champions League a year ago.
Mane as well. You can't forget Mane.
You have Sadio Mane still. I'd say the team was stronger in 2021. Maybe it's just a lack of motivation and a couple of injuries that they did pick up. But overall, they probably had a better team in 2021, if not equal to right now.
Yeah. Do you think Liverpool are going to be able to pick it up with like a few games left of the season, or is just going to hit their confidence and just start going downhill from here?
I honestly think they won't be able to pick it up just because I've seen just how Liverpool usually reacts to defeat. Like how you
Yeah.
say in that 2021, they lose a game and then they come back, play their second game. I forgot who it was against, but they try to play it harder than the first time, but they just lost again, and it keeps killing their confidence when
Mhm.
everything just keeps going wrong.
Yeah.
I
I
just feel like
feel
there's be more of that.
I completely agree. I mean, I don't see them like making any title fight anymore because it's like those two games completely kill confidence, like you said.
Yeah, you no longer depend on yourself. Liverpool was in a position where if they won it out, it was them. It
Mhm.
was them, and literally just directly Arsenal. Where if they would have won their game, Arsenal lost theirs. They were straight up in front.
Yeah. Now speaking about Arsenal losing theirs, that's exactly what happened at the weekend when they lost against a Champions League spot fighting Aston Villa. So it's not like it was lesser opposition than what Liverpool were facing against Crystal Palace. I mean, Villa is a tough opponent to face against. They had been going through kind of a rough patch, having lost like what 4-1 to Man City, and I
Yeah,
think they drew with West Ham or something like that,
and the game was Tottenham.
and lost against Tottenham. And it was funny because in the last podcast when we were talking about Arsenal, I was saying that like, nah, Trossard has to start because he's been coming up clutch for them. He did
And,
start this game.
and
He
I
was
said,
a shit show, bro.
said that some players when they just get the start, especially in an important game like this, it just happens. Some players are just not used to starting. There's more pressure to starting
Mhm.
than coming subbed on. And I've just seen that. You see that. Well, you'll always see that like 3 to 4 times a season, and it's just a common occurrence. That's why I said to put them in like when you're not really playing for something.
Mhm.
And at this point in the league, if you're competing for first place, if you're competing for a Champions League spot or a Europa League spot, and you want to switch up your starting 11, it's not the wisest thing to do, especially in the Premier League.
Yeah.
The Premier League experience is everything.
I think Mikel Arteta definitely learned his lesson, and it's funny because like one of the journalists like after the post match conference was like, "Oh, why'd you choose Trossard to start over Martinelli?" He's like, "I'm the coach. I make the decisions." So I feel like deep down with that response, he knows he fucked up, but
Yeah,
obviously he's not going to confront it in front of the media. But
I mean, he is the
I'm
coach.
not,
He makes the
but
decisions, but
I was gonna
he,
say like we can't also pinpoint that Trossard was like at fault for their loss, but I'm just saying like when those kind of decisions are starting to take place and there's a little bit of doubt, like that, it definitely ruins like what you got going on, like you said.
we're not saying Trossard was at fault for the loss, but what we are saying, or what we are comparing him to, is his performance that he pulled against was it Bayern Munich during
Hmm.
the week. And you compare that, and you get this start versus a team that's definitely inferior to Bayern Munich in the terms of football.
Yeah.
Bayern Munich plays better than Aston Villa. No disrespect to Aston Villa, but it just is what it is. They have better players. They have a stronger system. In my belief, I could be wrong, but Trossard comes in as a sub. He comes in without much pressure. Versus he starts against Aston Villa with all the pressure in the world of a title race, and that's just really the difference. Because starting, you really have to put the tempo into the game and the tempo into everything.
Hmm.
Versus when you come in as a sub, the tempo's already set. Your team's already gotten it going. Martinelli's, even though he's had a bit of a slip up, he's already in the momentum where he's like tugging and fighting. And you come in, you bring Trossard, and he's going against tired legs. He's not going against like fit 90, 94 minute legs. And that's really just a difference where rested legs versus tired legs. And I
Hmm.
just think that Trossard wasn't used to playing against players who are fresh as he is,
Hmm.
because he usually comes in as a sub, and it does affect him.
Yeah, I agree. And now, I mean, now, like I said, that affects the title race because Man City won their game at hand. They beat Luton Town pretty. It was like bad. It was like 5-1, right? 5-1, 4-1.
Pretty badly. We
And
won't talk about that.
they're pretty much securing the Premier League title. You know, I mean, like it's like we said, it's in their hands now. It was in Liverpool's hands, it was in Arsenal's hands, but now it's in Man City's hands. And we know very well that when Man City are in this position where they have full control of what they do and they have full control of their destiny, they're most likely going to see that out and they're going to succeed in that. They've done it before, and it's looking like it's Man City's title to lose now. Now,
Yeah.
is it possible that they can slip up? Very much, but it's rare. It's going to be a very rare thing to see, especially with. I mean, you're at the end of the season, and they're hitting their prime right now. Most of their players, so
Yeah, I mean that really always happens with City, where it's like, I told you, I think it was last podcast where I was like, a City in March is dangerous. Now we're in April, and they're even more dangerous.
mm-hmm.
And it's just something that we've seen across these past like 5 to 6 years with Pep Guardiola and this team. It's just something special to see as well. A lot of people will hate on it. They will say that, of course they have to look at the players they have on their bench, or of course this, of course that. But you could have the best players in the world, but if you don't have a coach that they can listen to, or a system that works for them, you really don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just what Pep is great at. And this City team, I mean, they've done it before, where they take the lead by 1 or 2 points, and they just take everything they can with that lead and end up winning the league by 4 points. I mean, they won the league against Liverpool. What was it, like 98 to 97?
Something like that. They were almost at 100 points. Yeah,
a couple years back. And it's something that I've seen before, so I predicted. I'm a big believer that history repeats itself, especially when it's recent history.
Mm-hmm.
So I just saw that coming.
Now with the fight for top 4, that's where things get a little bit tricky for me, because I'm like, who's gonna be Tottenham or Aston Villa? Because it's like one is consistent and then they drop points, and then the other one's consistent and then they drop points. It's like really hard to pick and see like who's gonna be for sure finishing that top 4. I mean, Tottenham were absolutely destroyed by Newcastle this weekend, 2-4-0. Villa, they beat, the top title contender in Arsenal, but very well what could happen next week is that Villa lose and Tottenham win. So it's like so hard to see who's going to finish in the top 4 spot. And I know we already kind of gave our prediction on who might win that out. You said I think Tottenham might get that, and I think I started to agree with you just because of Aston Villa's like poor form. But if Aston Villa performed like the way they did against Arsenal, and they use this to boost their confidence, I mean, Villa can very much make that comeback. I know Tottenham have that game in hand, but I don't know. I mean, just something about that Villa team, that Unai Emery ball is different.
The thing about the Prem is that it's just so hard to predict.
Mm-hmm.
It's always been so hard to predict, but that's why I like to go off of history, because history in the Prem really likes to repeat itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna stay with Tottenham getting into that spot, and Villa just edging out.
Something that isn't falling into history and is actually kind of quite weird to see is Chelsea and Man U fighting for a Conference League spot. They're not even fighting for Europa League at this point because of how horrible the season went, especially in that mid of the season. We're kind of at the end of the season. Man U struggling a little bit. Chelsea, I mean, they have their moments where they look like they're struggling. They also have their bright moments like they did today, winning 5-0 against Everton, a struggling Everton side, you have to say. But I mean, they're also fighting that with West Ham, who have been consistent as well. So it's like these 3 teams who are inconsistently consistent, which is really weird to say, especially coming from a Chelsea squad or a Manchester United squad. But yeah, they're now fighting for that the Conference League spot, and I don't know who's going to get it, and I don't know who really deserves it, because if you think about it, probably none of the 3 deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just been sad to see.
Yeah, honestly, it is sad to see. Like, such historic teams, like, with such a horrible downfall just this year. I don't think it's going to be like that for the rest of the club's history, but just for now.
Yeah, just for now.
Yeah. Talking about Chelsea, I mean, how can we not bring out Cole Palmer? Because, I mean, he went crazy this weekend not this weekend, actually, just today on Monday. He went crazy with I think he scored 4 goals against Everton, and now he's equaled Erling Haaland with top goals scored pretty much. And I don't know. I mean, I put out and I think that he's better than Phil Foden if we're looking at statistics, but you were so against that. So I'm going to ask you right here, is Cole Palmer better than Phil Foden?
No, he's not.
Bro, you a hater. You're such a hater.
21% of Cole Palmer's goals have come against Everton. 21%.
It's just
if you take those goals against Everton, he abused Everton. He stat padded all he could.
Hey, bro, you can only play what you have in front of you, though. If you think about it, you can only play what you have in front of you.
Okay, so let's look at what Phil Foden's had in front of him. He had Real Madrid in front of him.
Bro, it's just Madrid.
What do you mean it's just Madrid? They're a title contender every year consistently.
But you also have
Okay,
to
all
pay
right,
attention.
all right. Let's look at Cole Palmer's Champions League stats. Oh,
All right, that's not fair though. It's his first like real season playing like consistently. To be honest, Phil Foden has had some time like in and out. I mean, this is honestly Phil Foden's first consistent like campaign as well. But
last year was pretty consistent.
okay, but now he's like taking on that role of like
Exactly.
world
That's the
class
difference.
player.
That's the difference. This is Cole Palmer's first season, starting, being a
Exactly,
nice player.
exactly. He's already world class, bro.
And this is Phil Foden's first season already being just the face of Man City at this point.
Hmm. I mean, I agree with that. He is the face of Man
He
City.
scores if he were to ask Cole Palmer in which position he would be like, here's a Phil Foden, he'd pick Phil Foden. He'd rather be scoring against Real Madrid than scoring three against Everton. I mean, four against Everton.
Hey, then he scored against another hat trick against Manchester United, bro. Got to think about that.
Let's go, bro. Where's Real Madrid at though? Where's the champions that's at?
I mean, if we'll
So,
see if Chelsea can secure Conference League, and then we can talk about European statistics.
so Cole Palmer's best season led his team to a mid-table.
I mean, you have to look at what he's surrounded by, though. Phil Foden's surrounded by quality players. You have the Bernardo Silvas, the Erling Haalands, KDBs, Julian Alvarez, Jack Grealish's, Jeremy Doku's, Rodri's. I mean, what the hell is Cole Palmer surrounded by, bro? Madueke, Nico Jackson,
Cole Palmer accepted the
Gurea,
contract at Chelsea.
huh?
Cole Palmer accepted the contract at Chelsea. He left.
I know, but it's because he needed his playing time, bro. He needed to get out and explore. I think if he were to be
But
playing at City, he'd be doing maybe not the same, but I mean, he'd be probably playing that Phil Foden role like 2-3 how he was like 2-3 years ago. But it's a good idea that he was able to venture out and do something. I mean, you can see that he's able to prove himself, at the highest level. He's doing it, scoring 20 goals and I think over 10 plus assists. So I mean, he's a really good player. It's just me personally, I like the way he plays compared to Phil Foden. He's just so silky. I mean, so is Phil Foden. They're very similar. It's very hard to compare because they're almost like for like, left-footed, technically gifted, very silky. I mean, I was watching that goal that he scored against Everton today, where like he nutmegged the defender, then backheeled it to I think it was Nico Jackson, and then Nico Jackson did a little 1-2 with him, and then first time he let the ball roll kind of in front of him, and then finishes it around the goalkeeper. Dude, that shit was just nice. I mean, I don't see Phil Foden scoring no goals like that. I'm sorry.
I mean, you could say what you want, but a lot of players have talent. It's really just what you do with your talent and how you're able to explode those in crucial moments. And Phil Foden's been able to do that. Phil Foden's a Champions League winner. Phil Foden's competing in the Champions League this year. They're the favorites to win the Champions League.
Wait, isn't Cole Palmer a Champions League winner though? He was there last year.
I mean,
Got him,
he's an influential Champions League winner. Sorry, influence in that championship. The thing with Cole Palmer is that he went to a team where he was able to get playing time. He was at Man City. He would not have gotten the playing time that he got at Chelsea.
I agree.
So hopefully, he'll find his way back home one day.
He probably will be able to.
Because no disrespect to Chelsea, but if I'm Cole Palmer, I'm looking for my way back to Man City into that squad.
Or even just to a team that's playing Champions League football. You're like, if you're playing consistent, you're playing good like this, like why not venture out to another club? It doesn't even have to be in the league. You can go to like La Liga or Serie A or somewhere. I mean, I'm sure he would fit anywhere with his technical ability. But
the world's looking at Chelsea right now. They're thinking, like, this is their best offensive player this season. We have to get him out of Chelsea. He's really just being infected by Chelsea syndrome.
Yeah, pretty much.
Where he can't play. He can't play Champions League football next year.
Not even Europa League.
Probably not even not Europa League and probably not even European football in general. So if I'm Cole Palmer, I'm looking for the way out of Chelsea right now.
Yeah. And I feel like the higher ups would probably allow him because they see how good he is. They're like, nah, you cannot be here. You got to be somewhere. You can do better somewhere else.
At least alone. Let him play Champions League football. Let him get that experience. And if he comes back in Chelsea, makes it Champions League football next year, he could help you.
Definitely. I agree.
But I think his price tag has went up a lot. That English tax it's real. So if he gets sold, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, I guess we'll see what happens in the summer, but that kind of wraps up the Premier League slip-ups and everything that's going on there. Now let's look at Liga MX. Like I said, it's been I don't know how long it exactly it's been since we covered just the league itself, but I think it is important that we talk about it, especially because it's coming closer to La Liguilla, the playoffs, and I mean there are some very interesting matchups at the weekend. We had America Toluca with that fight for first place. They were tied on points and they were both in hot form. Then we also had El Clásico Regio with Monterrey versus Tigres, and that was a really good game. It tied 3-3. And then another direct fight for top 8, Chivas Pachuca. And that was an incredible game in itself where we saw Chivas fans completely invade Hidalgo. And yeah, so how can we not start first with the first place? America versus Toluca and that fight for first. Prior to the match, both teams were tied for first on points, with this game being the deciding factor. And Toluca were on scorching hot form. They were, I think, 8 games undefeated. And then America were in a similar boat with 5 games without a loss. But we saw how the game went on when it first started. I think the first 15 minutes there was like 3 goals. So you saw two teams that were like at it, like it was a battle for. They knew what they were fighting for first place. But then America, I think, with just the quality that they have and the depth that they have in the team, throughout the minutes, they really saw that and they took advantage of that. And overall, 5-1, they just completely smacked Toluca out the park, and now they're for sure first place. Now, one of the things that I wanted to ask you, and I think is an interesting topic to talk about, is Thiago Volpi or Luis Malagon. It was kind of like a battle between goalkeepers, because Luis Malagon took out some incredible saves. Thiago Volpi took out some incredible saves too. They definitely saved it from being an even more higher scoring game. So I know there's been talk of Thiago Volpi um, getting naturalized or getting his citizenship for to be able to play with the Mexico national team. He said he would be open to it, but he prefers not to talk about it because he feels it's disrespectful to younger Mexican goalkeepers, like a Luis Malagon, for example,
Yeah,
who's been doing it well. He's been called up as not getting, active minutes consistently. So I wanted to ask you, who would you prefer?
10 out of 10 times I would prefer Luis Malagon, especially because he's younger.
Hmm.
If you're asking me for La Selección Mexicana, I don't know why he's not starting over Ochoa.
Yeah,
He's better. He dives way better in my opinion. I don't know if he's taller. He might be taller, but
I think he might be a little shorter, but he is quicker. You can't deny that.
he
He's a
is
lot
quicker.
quicker.
He gets down to those corners, and I mean, for me, I've said this already. He had already earned his spot after saving Mexico from being humiliated by Honduras.
Yeah.
We go to penalties and he saves two or three. I forgot. But either way, why are we looking to naturalize the best South American players that come to Mexico?
Right. You cannot deny that Thiago Volpi is an amazing goalkeeper ever since his time at Querétaro, now at Toluca. Like, he's doing wonders. But I mean, he's not young like he used to be, like Luis Malagon. I think Luis Malagon is not that young either. He's like what, 26, 27. Thiago Volpi's already in his 30s. Like, why are you looking to bring someone on that's already in his 30s, that there's really no future? Give the younger players their opportunity, like Luis Malagon, and even younger players that are coming up. But I completely agree with you. I would take Luis Malagon 100%. I just thought it was an interesting concept to think about, because there has been talk of that will be possibly coming to the selección. And personally, yeah, I would 100%, 10 out of 10 times go with Luis Angel Malagon. There's no debate about that.
Yeah.
Moving over to Chivas Pachuca. Let's knock that out too, because that was, like I said, another fight for Liguilla spots. Chivas were kind of struggled, but they're finding their form towards the end of the season. We got um, key players coming back, and I don't know. I mean, you watched the game more than I did. I was at church, so I couldn't watch the game. But I mean, tell me a little bit of what you saw. I know Chivas did win. They were up 1-0, and like I said, it was a complete Chiva invasion at the Estadio Hidalgo. So there was a little bit of adversity for Pachuca fans there.
Yeah, I mean, I know you really don't like to talk or watch about the preview of games, but watching the preview, so many Mexican analysts have written off Chivas. They had them written off against the Monterrey game and had them written off for the Pachuca game, and they won both. But what I will say is that Chivas surprised me. Well, first let's go how the game started. The game started, first 10 minutes, Pachuca comes out offensive, of course. Chivas takes time to be able to adjust to that. They really just get caught up, and Pachuca has a couple of like two or three really solid chances coming into the first 10 minutes of the game where Salomon Rondon really just he skies one. He has a couple shots on goal,
Hmm.
and just two easy saves and one just really really high. And then Chivas they just take the ball away from Pachuca. They impose their style. They have Roberto Alvarado instead of going on the wing, they start him as a right midfielder, and he really just takes the ball from them and touches them around.
Hmm.
And the idea of what I got from Chivas was that they really wanted to take the ball from Pachuca and not risk anything. Where they go to it's okay, they attack Pachuca, but they don't risk anything coming back. They would just really touch it solid touches. Keep the ball, move it to the wing, try to look for a cross. If the cross doesn't come out, fine. Okay, we'll track back and we'll do it again.
Hmm.
Win the ball back, touch it slowly going forward, and like something like that. Whereas Pachuca is really they could be a possession based team. They could take the ball away from you, touch it, slowly build up towards your goal, or they could really be like a smash and grab team, smashing. What's it called? Yeah, smash and grab team where they take the ball away from you and they're just on you. A fast build up, fast pace.
Hmm.
And teams like that are super dangerous because you really don't know what style they're going to hit you with. Like versus America, they come out smash and grab. They let America have the ball. They take the ball away from them and they score two goals the same exact way.
Hmm.
Where they win the ball back and then they're just on it. And versus Chivas, they try to do a similar style, but they win the ball back and there's already two midfielders on them.
Yeah.
And they take the ball back, they win the ball back, and then they just go back to possession based football.
I feel like Chivas' style this season they've been doing very hard at implementing like that high pressure. Getting like you said, two men on the ball, pretty much trying to get that ball back.
Which is really I'd like to say a Spanish tactic because the first time I seen that was with Pep Guardiola's 6 second press
Hmm.
where you try to win the ball in the first 6 seconds. And I mean Fernando Gago, he played in Spain, so that's probably something that he learned because Real Madrid also had a similar style before Mourinho and after with Ancelotti,
Hmm.
where they kind of win the ball back again, they suffocate you. But other than that, I mean, we really have to talk. Other than the game, you really have to see how these fans reacted to when Chivas scored, or well, when there was an own goal. The stadium sounded like a full Akron stadium. It did
Yeah,
not sound like a
as
Pachuca.
if it was being played in Guadalajara, but it wasn't. And that's what I wanted to talk about too. Is like how big Chivas is in the country. You know, in
And
North America in
mhm,
general.
the biggest thing for me has always been, you either love Chivas or you hate Chivas. And the two biggest teams in Mexico, the most loved is Chivas, and then the most hated is America. And
Hmm.
that's what makes them the biggest teams because everybody in Liga MX is paying attention to what these two clubs do. Chivas is more like, semi to themselves or like, oh, like we have this, we're all Mexicans, we love it like this, we love this, we love this. It's like love. And America is more of the envy, which Liga MX teams feel where they're like, oh, well, they keep winning or they can't stop winning, and people feel envy towards that.
Yeah,
Is the slogan where it comes like,
it,
Odiame más.
it's funny because a lot of people like they hate on America, they hate on Chivas, and yes, there's a lot of hatred between like the fan bases or whatever. But you have to keep in mind that we kind of need each other, like as fans, because if not, there's no rivalry, and if there's no rivalry, there's no passion. So you have to keep that in mind that you kind of need each other. America fans, Chivas fans, all that stuff. I
Yeah.
mean, goes the same thing for other teams that like Pachuca and Chivas. They kind of need each other to fuel rivalries, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, you go back to the history of the Chivas America, it starts like in the 70s. So, like, I mean, that's even before our parents were born.
Mm.
That's already a long history.
Now, like moving into rivalries and thinking about rivalries, one of the biggest ones, not just the Clásico Nacional, but El Clásico Regio, the Tigres versus Monterrey. I mean, you also watch this game, and it's probably one of the biggest games next to El Clásico. And like you said, it's one of the most anticipated games to watch that everybody watches in Mexico. And a Tigres team who had their confidence kind of shot down because of their early exit against the Columbus Crew. Monterrey have been flying high. I mean, they knocked out Inter Miami in such a dramatic fashion, knocking them out 3-0. Messi and company. So you have to keep that in mind. So two different dynamics playing into this game and playing at the BBVA, right? This is what the stadium called, or Bancomer? What's it called?
Yeah, well, it's both.
Yeah.
It's
So
really
they're playing in Monterrey. Keep in mind, they're playing there. And I mean, it's a sold out stadium, kind of similar to the Inter Miami game.
with the
And
better field, with the better field this time.
there was still a little bit of like choppiness. I saw a video of like them trying to fix the field. So there's something that I have to definitely look at before the World Cup. But besides that, besides the little technical issues, I mean, the game in itself delivered. Like I said, it was a 3-3 draw. But I know you watched more of the match, so talk to me a little bit about what happened.
I mean, it was something crazy because you look at the Clásico Regio, and the thing about Clásicos, whether it be the Nacional or the Clásico Local, is that it doesn't matter who's coming in better form. It doesn't matter who won their past games. It doesn't. Nothing matters. What everything that matters is between those 90 minutes,
Yeah.
between the first whistle and the final whistle. And that's what the thing I love about Clásicos, because it's played like a final. It's played like a final, and I mean, especially these two teams, just with the similar to America Chivas, these two teams need each other, and there's that hatred between fan bases,
Mhm.
where they really want to beat each other, especially Tigres coming off motivated to beat them at their house. So, I mean, Tigres get an early goal with Brunetta, they at the second minute. And I mean, Luis Romo gets a tie, and you could just feel like the stadium erupts after
Mhm.
Romo scores that goal. And you could tell that, contrary to what happened in Hidalgo, Monterrey filled up their stadium completely. And it's just something special to see, that there's more. Well, not that there's more. There's always been a big Monterrey fan base, but that they're showing out a lot more now.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, the game continues, and Tigres just takes control going early into the second half. They scored a 2-1, then they scored a 3-1, and you think it's pretty much over. With the crazy assist from Guignac, I mean, he just passes it between, and Brunetta gets a third goal. And honestly, if you look at the stadium, it goes quiet for a good 10 minutes. And then they just amp up again. They just put pressure again. Arteaga gets a 3-2. And then the most controversial thing that would have happened in this jornada would be that there was 8 minutes added, correct?
Hmm.
There was 8 minutes added to the game.
Now, was it a deserved 8 minutes, or do you feel like 8 minutes was okay for
It
the
was,
game?
I'd say it was a deserved 8 minutes. You could have even pushed it to 10.
Okay.
Just what they were doing. Because of the subs, I mean, Roberto Dante Siboldi burns all of his subs. He takes out Guignac, he puts in Nico Ibanez, he takes out Marcelo Flores, he just puts really defensive minded players in, and you're talking about the 72nd, 75th minute,
Hmm.
where you put just defensive players in. It's almost like as if you were asking to get scored on. But then again, you look back and think, this is the way that's worked for Tigres. They get an early lead, they get 2, 3 goals in, and then they just kind of make their subs at the 70, 75th, 80th minute, and then they just kind of hold down that. The difference really was that Monterrey was able to, put in that first goal like before the 70th minute. He puts his subs in, tries to hold down the lead, and it kind of backfires on him because these subs are obviously wasting time, walking out. So it's a
Yeah.
deserved 8 minutes. The controversial part is that the goal happens at the 99th minute.
Hmm. But I mean, I'm assuming that they were wasting more time during the added time because that's typically what happens when they go a little bit over.
There was 2 yellow cards for wasting time.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So then they can't even complain that it's controversial. Well, if your players are wasting time when there's added time already, like you're taking away from the game being played. So yeah, we're gonna add another minute, and we're gonna add another, and we're gonna keep adding minutes until there's a full 8 minutes being played because that's the rules.
And if
So
Tigres really wants to pinpoint you could have done more on somebody. I wouldn't even blame Dante Siboldi because Nico Ibanez has two 1v1s versus the goalie, where he just really just pokes the ball out twice. I would have thought he would have learned the first time. He poked the ball out and then it just goes, whatever. But he doesn't. Nico Ibanez really just keeps poking the ball out for some reason. I don't know if the pressure got to him or I really don't know what happened. But what I can tell you is that Monterrey, Monterrey was the one that was really, if you would have want to say robbed, because there was a clear handball from a Tigres player where the ball kind of comes across his body. He lifts his leg up. The ball hits his leg. Okay, the ball hits his leg, but the deflection was going towards the center of the goal,
Hmm.
and he kind of sticks his arm forward where he smashes the ball in between his arm and his leg. And Cesar Arturo Ramos, he goes to VAR. He looks at this, but he decides not to call it because under the rule that if it hits a body part before your arm, where it's not a penalty.
Yeah.
Thing is that he sticks out this body part and then he sticks out his arm to kind of smash the ball in between the body part that was first deflected from
Hmm.
and his arm.
That's the tough call. Because like I would argue that yeah, it would be a penalty because it hit his leg before. But if you said that he's intentionally doing both, like intentionally doing both at the same time, pretty much, those are really hard calls.
I mean, I
So
guess,
I think maybe he played it safe. He was like, you know what, I'm just not gonna call it because it's too much at stake, pretty
yeah,
much. Because it's a classical, and because it is a difficult call to make. So I can see why he wouldn't call it.
I, I would have called it just off the base that when you try to block a ball with your leg, you kind of just stick out your leg and your body's usually leaning back. You're trying to make your leg as big as possible.
Yeah.
He kind of tries to make his arm as big as possible by putting it in front of his leg.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to trying to make his body as big as he can using his arm, and that's an offense.
That was one of those tough calls. But now looking forward towards the league table, where does that leave everybody at? I know America, like I said, they're first place. Toluca obviously right under them, but now we got what Monterrey in third. They're just a few points, if not, yeah, they're what like a few points right behind. Oh no, they're tied in points with Toluca. That was crazy. And Tigres fighting to fit in the top 8 as well. They're in seventh with 25 points. Just tied with Chivas as well in eighth.
Yeah,
Pachuca's in sixth. So I don't know. That fight for the Liga is getting kind of heated because everyone's trying to like squeeze in. So I guess we'll keep you guys updated on what happens there. But anyways, thank you, Tomas, for hopping on. I appreciate you. Like I said, there was a lot of stuff that was going on in the world of football that we always have to talk about. And thank you guys for listening. Make sure to support your small creators because together we'll make it big. And yeah, I appreciate Tomas for helping me out once again. Hopefully, we can start introducing another member soon. We'll see when he'll be ready for us and to hop on and help us out over here. And so you guys could meet him as well. Yeah, make sure to follow Charla Football on the website. That will have the links to articles, to the Spotify, to the YouTube as well. Support and follow. Make sure to do all that. And yeah, once again, thanks so much. See you, bro.
all right, thank you.